Welcome to this episode of the Year in Review series where we are doing 22 videos with one insight each for the last 22 days of the year as we count down to the end of 2022. In an earlier episode, we spoke about how to be positive, and this coincidentally represents half the title of my book, How to Stay Positive and Productive. Having already uncovered how to be positive in an earlier episode, in this episode, let us throw spotlight on how to be productive. Just like we did last time, first up, we will start with the data so that we are talking based on facts and not just based on somebody's intuition or gut feel. And when it comes to facts, how do we know what the world wants to do in terms of wanting to be productive? Well, as we did last time, we will rely upon Google to provide the answers because Google knows everything. They know exactly what everybody in the world is looking for, or at least most of the world. So, with that, let us look into the long term trends around people looking for how to be productive. So, as you can see in the chart here, the search for how to be productive has been on a consistent increase through all these years. And this is not just data for 1 or 2 years, this has been happening over a very long period of time for 10, 15 years or so. Secondly, as we also noticed in how to be positive, even in the case of how to be productive, there are these peaks and troughs that you see on the chart out there. And once we look closer into these peaks, you will realize a couple of things. Firstly, a massive peak was reached in the month of April 2020, which was a period right after the declaration of the lockdown when people realized that they are going to be homebound for a long time to come and they really need to step up their game in terms of productivity and adjusting to the new way of working, to the lockdown, to the pandemic, to everything else that was going around them. And that probably explains why the search volumes for how to be productive peaked in the month of April 2020. Another peak that you would see in this chart is at the beginning of 2022, and that again coincides with the Russia-Ukraine war. And probably at that point in time as well, when there were clouds of doom and gloom all over Europe and indeed all over the world, people were on the lookout for how to be productive amidst all of this global mayhem. For those of you who've already seen my earlier episode on how to be positive, you may have observed that there is a very strong correlation between people looking for how to be positive and how to be productive. But just to put things in perspective, the volumes for how to be productive are far lower than the volumes of how to be positive. So the search for positivity is much more than the search for productivity. Maybe people already know some of the tools around being productive and they were looking for those tools and those terms rather than searching for the umbrella term of how to be productive. But we don't know that for sure. This is the story that the data is telling us. But what is the story under the hood? Let us look at 2 or 3 dimensions that drive these search volumes and the behavioral patterns when people want to look for being more productive. First of all, let's just start with some good news. The good news is that in general, people want to be productive. They want to be searching for ways and means to be productive. And this search has intensified and has become acute in the recent past. So that's good news for the future of work. The not so good news is probably that people are feeling that they are not being productive enough, that they probably need more, there is something lacking, which is why they are on the lookout or on the search to be more productive. But since we want to be both positive and productive, let's drive this discussion into an area where we can be both positive as well as productive. And the way we do that is by uncovering some of the meta trends or some of the big ticket issues and levers that have been driving the whole debate and discussion on productivity. Needless to mention, there will be individual factors which will be the case with each and every one of us. But right now what I'm trying to do is just talk about some 4 or 5 big macro issues. The first meta trend is around the structure of work itself. As we saw, the peak that happened in April 2020 was not just because of the mental health or the mental state of people, but also because of the dramatic shift in the structure of work. People who were earlier used to working in office spaces were suddenly required to work from the confines of their home. And when home and work overlap in the same physical space, then it leads to a lot of distortion, confusion, and lack of productivity. So this was one big thing that happened. This continued for some time, and by the time people settled in their remote working environments or working from home environments, The pandemic started ebbing away and people started returning to work, but not all of them. So this resulted in a return back to a new normal, which was a sort of a hybrid structure where some people are working from home, some people are working from office, some people shuttling between the two. And if we look at the directions that have been coming from various companies, there is no consistency which points towards just one single way of the future of work. We probably will see a future where multiple methods will abound and people will pick and choose from a menu of options of how they want to structure their work and how to drive that balance between work and home. The second big trend is the macroeconomic picture. There are many factors which are pointing towards a looming recession in many countries of the world. And this is not good news, whether you are in business or in employment or freelancing. In any case, the economic recession or the macroeconomic environment will surely take its toll on each and every one of us. So that is something that is at the back of everybody's minds. And this is manifested in a couple of different ways. Firstly, what we saw at the beginning of the year, particularly in the startup ecosystem, was what people called the funding winter or the freeze in funding. As you might be aware, the last 1 or 2 years have seen a massive infusion of capital into the startup ecosystem. This is driven partly by the fact that the pandemic has resulted in a huge impetus on digitalization or adoption of technology and for people looking out for new solutions. So, with everything looking good on tech driven businesses, a lot of capital was chasing these businesses. And suddenly, as I also alluded to in one of the earlier episodes, the assumptions turned out to be overtly optimistic. And as a result, there was a drawdown or a slowdown in the funding. And once this happened, the pack of cards started falling apart. And this also led to a firing frenzy, not just because organizations were not able to sustain the cost base, but also because of the predictions that they had made about the future in alignment with the macroeconomic picture of the recessionary environment. When all of these factors were combined, it led to number one, a fear psychosis, and number two, a deepening of the hustle culture. And what followed was a mad scramble for productivity. And not just productivity, but the need to be seen and perceived as someone who is productive. And as we know, perception is bigger than reality. The third big trend is certainly technology itself. In today's world, a discussion on productivity typically does not happen without technology or tools that help us improve and enhance our productivity. While this is great, we would all love for productivity enhancing tools, and there have been a lot of them over the last few years which have become a part and parcel of our day-to-day lives, particularly collaboration tools, tools which help us work better in a remote working environment, not just help us do but also manage remote work more effectively. However, there is another side to technology. When things go overboard and technology and automation start taking away more and more chunks of our lives, then it leads to a fear and a mistrust of technology. This also stems from the fact that post the Industrial Revolution, the mental model for employees is that they are equated to machines. Just like machines are a tool for enhancing the productivity, similarly, human beings or the workforce are also seen as tools to enhance the productivity. When it comes to doing work which is repetitive in nature, which is standardized in nature, which by its very nature can be automated with a little bit of implementation of technology, we know for a fact that we are in a losing race with technology when it comes to performance of these tasks in a manner that is productive, that is consistent, that leads to high quality and consistent outputs. So then are we saying that we are on a losing battle in terms of productivity? We will get to that answer in a minute, but a spoiler alert, the answer lies in reframing what we mean by productivity. But let's also look at one of the other factors which is driving these meta trends around productivity. This factor is the lack of focus or the existence and the proliferation of distractions. As we all know, we are acutely aware that we are living in an extremely distracted world. Not only is technology distracting us from our work, but we have layers on top of technology. We are tethered to our devices not just because of the technology that is available in those devices, but because of the layer of content, data, information, the dopamine triggers that keep bombarding us from time to time. We are living in an extremely connected world. We are living in a world where content and information is being generated by the nanosecond. And what this results in is these continuous dopamine triggers which hit us all the time. And as a result of that, we are living in a heightened state of perpetual distraction. In simple terms, what this means is that we are completely unable to focus on the task at hand. As a result, what we very often see people saying or complaining is that they have been at work in front of their computers, in front of their workstations all the time, but they don't know how the time just flies away. They have well meaning intentions. They are, in fact, sitting on their workstation. They are not speaking on their phone, they are not taking a break, but they are just not able to get their work done. And they don't know how the time has flown away. So, these were some of the macro trends that are shaping this debate on productivity. First up, we had the big issue of a change in the structure of work with remote versus hybrid. Second up, we had to deal with the macroeconomic situation and the looming recession. And thirdly, we are dealing with the forces of technology which can cut in either direction. And fourthly, we are talking about living in a distracted world where we are just unable to focus. Under these circumstances, with all these four massive factors appearing to be playing against us, how do we win this war and how do we become more productive? As I hinted earlier, the answer lies in reframing. If you look at all of these four, the basic premise of productivity is that we are supposed to do more and more of what we have been doing until now. However, that is hardly the formula for success in a corporate world or even in a business world. Output divided by input is a classical way to measure productivity. It is applicable largely to the environment of machines, and that is why, as I mentioned earlier, most of the management thinking and the metrics and the governance mechanisms have been built around the industrial era where machines were predominant. So everything ultimately boiled down to how can a machine or a combination of a man and machine in whichever proportion can be more productive, can churn more units of output in a given unit of time. What this resulted in is a very myopic focus on productivity, whereas the term productivity, in my opinion, can be interpreted as a much larger and broader term. And the way we can reframe this discussion on productivity is by changing the numerator itself. So instead of talking about the units of work, units of standardized, commoditized, repetitive work that we have been doing until now, how is it that we can maximize the value of the ecosystem by leveraging our capabilities and the capabilities of the environment, the ecosystem, our network, and whatever other resources we may have at our disposal. So, if we reframe the productivity debate like that, you would see that all the four impediments that we spoke about will come crumbling down. Firstly, in terms of structure of work, it will not matter whether you're working from home or whether your team member is not working from home and you are, or the team is configured differently. The idea is that we should maximize the value that we can create by collaborating with each other. Secondly, in terms of the macroeconomic environment and the industry trends, one needs to be foresighted. One needs to look at what is going to be the future, which industries are going to be prominent, which roles are going to be prominent, which functional skills are going to be prominent, which soft skills are going to be prominent. And we should shape our careers or our business ventures around those where we see more demand in the future. It's extremely important to look at the macroeconomic trends or the broader trends of society so that we are able to operate in an environment which sees growth and with lesser competition. This will automatically take care of a lot of these looming fears around the funding freeze, around the firing frenzy, around the looming recession. Whatever it may be, we will at least be far better off if we make those additional efforts to find that sweet spot and not be productive in what we were doing yesterday and try and be more value additive by aligning ourselves to the future. Thirdly, in terms of technology, once again the debate becomes much simpler. Instead of viewing technology as a foe who is going to come and take away your job or eat away those repetitive, boring, commoditized, standardized tasks that you were doing, or even fun and interesting tasks that you were doing, as we are seeing with more intelligent automations and technologies such as GPT-3, which are the driving force behind ChatGPT, which became viral this year. Even if it is all of that, we still need to view technology as a friend. If we do that, we will be able to maximize the value that we can create from the resources that we have at our disposal. Because the ultimate objective is not maximizing the value of a task done individually by ourselves. We are not a cog in the wheel. We are not a machine. We are superior humans who can align and configure all of the resources together to create the perfect recipe and to add the maximum value possible. If we are able to reframe this, then we change the way we look at things and we can not just be productive, but we can be massively value additive in our approach. And last but not the least, we spoke about this lack of focus or living in an eternally distracted world. Here again, once we know what is it that we are chasing, once we have our goals clearly set in our minds, then we can align ourselves, our activities, our mind to focus on the task at hand. Instead of getting distracted with the hundreds of priorities, notifications, communications, messages, etc., that are bombarding us all the time, we can have a laser sharp focus on what we know is going to be value additive so that we can go beyond productivity. I hope you were able to gain an additional perspective on this debate around productivity, and in the times to come, you will be able to reframe and rediscover your productive potential. All of this may be too much of information to pack, and you may struggle implementing all of this, even though you may have found this video valuable. In order to help people with their journey towards productivity and better managing their time, what I've also done this year is created a framework distilling my experiences both during the normal times, the not so normal times, and during the pandemic times. A framework that works irrespective of the macroeconomic environments, helps you become more productive and maximize the value of your time and the other resources that you have at your disposal. So stay tuned, as in the coming times I will be unveiling this framework, but let me give you a sneak preview of what it is going to be all about. In a nutshell, what it is going to ensure is that your time is well directed. And let me also direct your attention towards something that I need from you, which is for you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And please do leave your comments behind on what you thought about this discussion on productivity. What are your current challenges with productivity, and what would you need help with? Conversely, if you have won the productivity war or even won some minor battles, I would love to hear from you on what your experience has been. How did you go about enhancing this productivity, changing your mindset, leveraging tools, or whatever else is it that you may have done? With that, I will see you in the next episode of this Year in Review series. Thank you.